do that.
All right, first of all, Dan was not brought up in a Christian home. His dad was a traveler, so he was gone almost every week, 2 or 3 times during the week. And when Dan grew up, his mom and dad many times did not have a good relationship, the silent treatment. The mom did not like him traveling, you know. So he had a lot of dysfunction in his family. And like I said, did not grow up in a Christian family. Now me, I grew up in a pastor's home. And so you may think, wow, she had this great family, you know. Truth is, I had a terrible, terrible dysfunctional family. My parents did divorce after 50 years in ministry. And as I grew up, there'd be times when my dad would leave us and live in his church office. And we would go to church and act like everything was okay. And so we are not coming as these people who had perfect examples in front of us, you know. But he and I both had that desire to have a good, strong marriage. And I think these principles tonight and tomorrow will help you. And, you know, like I said, we're not perfect, but hopefully some things that we say can be a blessing to you.
And in your booklet, if you open up to session 1 at the top there, I read an article in Forbes at Forbes.com, and you can look it up too. It's a recent article, and it was all about divorce. And I wanted to share just a little bit of that. You can see there at the top it said that they surveyed like 1,000 couples, and so one of the things that really stood out to me in the article was that it said 63% of divorcees thought that a better understanding of the commitments of marriage could have helped them avoid divorce, which just lets us know that most people go into marriage unprepared, right? It's like, I'm just in love, we're just going to get married, and there's not really any mentoring or any counseling. There's not a whole lot of help there. People just kind of dive into marriage without really knowing what they're getting into. And so 63% were like, man, if we'd have just understood the commitments, we think it could have helped us avoid divorce. So that really shocked me right there, just how that people come into marriage with false expectations. I know along those lines,
I think something that spoke to me in that same article is said that when people have a desire to get married, there's usually a ultimate desire in their mind what they think marriage should be. And if they get married, and if that desire is not fulfilled, they are much quicker to divorce for that same reason. If that desire that they thought was marriage is not fulfilled, they're easy to cross out marriage and divorce.
And in your handout, in your booklet, I want you to look at a statement there. It gave in the article the top reason for divorce. And I have there, this is the top reason listed by these couples for the reason why they divorced. And by the way, 50% of people who get married, the statistics show, divorce. So 50% of people who say, I do, say, I'm done. 50% say, I'm done. And so when you look at that blank, I want you to think about that for a minute, okay? It says that the top reason for divorce was a lack of blank. Anybody want to take a guess at what you think? I hope we didn't put it on the screen yet. Good, we did not. It was a lack of what? What do you think? Lack of communication? What else? Attention? Commitment? Grace? Trust? No one's going to man up and say sex. Nobody's going to say lack of sex, but okay, I know some of you are thinking that, right, guys? That you think that's the top reason listed, right, guys? What else? Anything else? Let me get, I didn't hear, what was that? What? Lack of sleep. Okay, lack of sleep. If you got kids, for sure, amen? Lack of money. I thought somebody would say money. Good. Here it is. You ready? We'll bring it up on the screen. Go ahead and bring it up. Lack of what? Write that in there. I want you to write it in. Lack of compatibility. That was the top. Like over 60%. That's crazy. Out of 1,000 couples said lack of compatibility. That's crazy to me. Because there was obviously enough compatibility when they dated that the decision was made, I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life with you. So there was enough compatibility at some point that they said, I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life with you. And yet now all these people who divorced said, yeah, it was a lack of compatibility. But what was really interesting to me, and I'm going to bring it up, I've got it right here, the article, is they said, okay, what were like the major signs that your marriage was at risk? What were the things, because they said, you know, for couples that are married, they want to know, what were the major risk factors that you saw before you divorced? And so in your notes, I want you to try to jot down a couple, just real quick. I just want you to jot down, what do you think were some warning signs that their marriage was in trouble? And I just want you to write down a couple of them that you think that in your mind, what would be a warning sign that your marriage is in trouble? Just be honest with yourself and just jot down a couple things real quick. Give you a minute. And then I'm going to tell you what they are. And you don't have to write all these down, but here's what they were. You ready? The number one thing on the list I think might surprise you. They said the number one risk factor that we knew our marriage was in trouble, lack of showing an interest in one another. Did you get it? Let's hear it for this guy. He got it. All right. Awesome. Of course, he read the article before he came here tonight, but no, he didn't. I'm just kidding. Okay, number 2 was poor conflict resolution. Number 3 was avoiding each other. Number 4 was lack of respect. Number 5 was increased criticism, from each other. Number 6, poor communication. But here's what I want to bring out. All of the top 6 are communication issues. Showing a lack of interest in each other, poor conflict resolution, avoiding each other, lack of respect, increased criticism, all those. The top 6, I almost hit you. Sorry about that, babe. But I went to a marriage conference and saw the guy knock his wife out, all right? She's like, I'm going to scoot way over. I'm really animated. I'm hyper. You guys know that. But yeah, right. Yeah. Launch out, right. But those of you who are here for missions conference get that. But the top 6 were all communication issues. And so what I really want to emphasize in this conference here today and tomorrow, when communication breaks down at any level in any marriage, it's not going to be good results. I'm not saying you're going to divorce, but it is not going to be a happy life. So think about this. 2 people meet, and they eventually get married. Most of the time, how does it start? It starts with a friendship, right? What do close friends do? They communicate. Me and Mike have been friends now for way back, I don't know how long, we were in our early 20s when we met, and we've been friends ever since. But what do? The reason why we're still, because I got good friends from college. I haven't talked to them in 30 years, right? And I wouldn't even consider him a friend anymore. So why is Mike still my friend 30 years later? It's because we communicate. We talk 40 years. Because we talk, we communicate. We just kept the lines of communication going for 40 years. And so good friends communicate. Hun, do you want to speak into that a little bit?
I think for us as women and ladies, when we fall in love with that person because we feel that they truly care about us. Not just our outward appearance, but about us, about our emotional needs, our mental needs. They care, they care if we're upset. They care if we're stressed. I think they care about our beliefs, our plans, our goals. When Dan and I were in college together, I am almost 2 years older than him, so I was a junior and he was a freshman. And so we were just friends. I didn't think about liking him and he didn't think about liking me, but we were friends. And I got sick, and he sent me, he did not know that I like precious moments, but he gave me, you know what a precious moment is,
Y'all know
right?
what those are? Okay.
We're not that old. He gave me a precious moment water globe, and I still have that to this day. It doesn't look as pretty as it did 38, I guess, almost 40 years ago. Yeah. But that spoke volumes to me. Because I thought, he cares about me. We weren't even dating, but he cared enough when I was sick to do something kind for me. So I think women, for us, it's that attention, that he cares, he has affection for me. Give the guy's opinion.
Yeah, well, I think when couples date, like we did, you have 2 goals, and they're maybe not spoken, but they're unconscious goals. When you're dating, you want to get to know each other, right? I remember when you and Cheryl were dating, and you want to get to know that person, find out if you're compatible. And then the second goal is you want to show the other person that you care about them. So when you're dating, it's like, okay, I want to get to know them, and then once I get to know them, and if I really like them, I want to show them that I care about them, which is why I got her the water globe or whatever it was called. Yeah. So here's my point. Why should those goals be dropped after the wedding? Getting to know each other and showing each other that you care about each other. Why should those goals be dropped after the wedding? And so we're going to talk about communication. Close friends communicate. Bottom line. Proverbs 27, it says, iron sharpens iron, and so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. It says in Proverbs, ointment and perfume rejoice the heart. So does the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel, conversation, communication. And so good friends communicate. You have to keep the lines of communication really open, and we're going to talk about that. So in your booklet, I want to give you this. What exactly is communication? We talk about that a lot, but it's certainly more sometimes, I think, than what we think it is. The word communication means to share, to partner, companionship, to partner together. Other forms of the word communicate are where we get the words communion and community. So it carries the idea, communication carries the idea of togetherness, being joined together in a way that you interrelate, you strengthen that relationship. What does God declare about the marriage relationship? Well, you go back to Genesis 2. How does God view marriage? All right, well, you go back to Genesis 2. He creates Adam and Eve. He creates man and woman. They come together. The Bible says, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. So in God, and that's reiterated in Ephesians 5 in the New Testament, and it says that our marriage is a picture of our union with Jesus. So just as we're one with Christ, I'm one with Denise, and God views it that way. And I know it's hard to wrap our minds around that, but God views us as one. Not that we lose our identity, but God views us now as one flesh. And I think, Denise, you got an illustration of that intimate oneness.
I think this is a good illustration. My notes tonight, I have them what? I have them paper clipped together. You know, I can take this paper clip off, and I can take all of my notes and separate them. You know, they're all individual notes on each piece of paper, you know. That paper clip puts them together, but I can easily take it off, and they're separated. But I have a sheet of paper here. And actually, it's 2 sheets of paper that I have glued together, okay? So there are 2 sheets, and actually on the back of that, I have some names on that. Now, I'll explain that later. But marriage should not be like a paper clip, you know? It shouldn't be 2 of you separated. Can come together sometimes, but don't have to be. It should be like the 2 pieces of paper that are glued together. If I try to take these pages apart, there's going to be some tore up paper, some hurt going on, you know. In a marriage, divorce causes hurt, you know. Now you say, what in the world do you have all those names for? And I thought this was important, you know. Divorce, if Dan and I would divorce, it's not just hurting us. I have Candace and Jason on this list. I have all of Candace and Jason's children. I have Aaron and Kaylee. I have all of our kids, our grandkids. I have Mike and Cheryl. I have Jesse and Leah. These are all people that we know personally. And if we chose to divorce, yeah, we have hurt. But guess what? All these people that we have influence on have hurt. You know, in your notes it says,
yes.
It said here, true communication is to realize in practice, which is everyday living, the oneness that God declares about your position as husband and wife. We have a oneness. Think of yourself not as a paperclip, but as glue. You are now one flesh.
And communication is experiencing that oneness on a daily on a daily basis. I love 1 Peter 3:7 because it's talking about marriage. And he says to the husbands, dwell with them, your wife, dwell with them according to knowledge. What a great definition of communication. Know each other. Communication is knowing and growing in your understanding of each other. Think about this for a moment. I want you to think about marriage. You got two people, and they come from completely different backgrounds, probably, maybe different cultures, and you certainly have different backgrounds, different history, different family traditions. You have different ways of doing things. You have this degree of independence, different upbringings. All these things are different from your past and your spouse's past. But we're going to take those two people that are vastly from different backgrounds, different experiences, different upbringings, different traditions, different ways of doing things, and we're going to bring them together and have them live under the same roof. And we're going to say, now y'all get along, right? Have a good marriage. And here you got two vastly different people. And we're going to throw them together. And so all of a sudden now you're living together under the same roof. And hopefully now you got two people that are living together and walking in the same direction together. My point is this: marriage is a complicated arrangement. It's a complicated arrangement. And communication is vital, right? Or it doesn't have a chance. That's why 50% don't make it. Because, I mean, you think about the challenge of that, taking two vastly different people, bringing them together and saying, okay, now you're going to live together and every day, day by day, and get along and walk in the same direction together. It's a tough deal, right? And so communication is vital, or it does not have a hope of survival. Denise, the next section there, it says communication is more than words. And I think, Denise, you had an illustration of the fact that communication is more than words.
All right, how many of you are parents in here?
How many have you had
kids? Most of us.
Wow.
How many have ever told your kid to take out the trash, pick up their clothes, turn off their video games, turn off the TV? Now, our three sons may not have said no, or they may not have said, I don't want to do that. But they communicated really well to me by rolling their eyes or pouting or huffing or, stomping their feet. They didn't have to use words, but I knew that they were not happy. Dan and I, we're lovely people. Yes. But guess what? If Dan says something and I'm not real happy about it, I don't even have to say a word. He knows, If he is studying in the family room and I have to ask him a question and he doesn't really want to be bothered by me, he doesn't even have to say a word, and I know he doesn't want to be bothered. So, communication is more than just words. It's those facial expressions.
It's more than that, yeah. If I'm studying and she asks me to do something that I don't want to do while I'm studying and I don't want to be bothered, I just give her the Mike Grover face.
No, he doesn't. He gives his own face.
I'm just picking on you, Mike. Just picking on you, Mike. But it's funny. We were at Park recently on a walk, and when we started our walk, there was a mom and her child, and the child was probably 1.5, wasn't at talking age yet, but that child, she was trying to get the child to get up and go to the car, and the child didn't want to go to the car, and the child was on the ground, screaming, yelling, flailing, and all of a sudden we walk by, and the mother, they were Hispanic. She goes, uno, dos, and so she's counting in Spanish. She'll give them the 1, 2, 3 thing. And so when we walked by, we got tickled, And I said to her, when a child doesn't want to do something and wants to communicate it and they yell and scream, it doesn't matter what language. We all understand very well, right, that they don't want to do it. And so my point is this: communication is more than words. Communication involves the complete interaction between two people. So it involves words, yes, but it also involves facial expressions. It involves body language. If you guys have ever heard the Dan and Shay song, Your body language is giving you away. How many of you are married, and how many of you know from your spouse's body language? How many of you know that gives them away, huh? Yeah. Yeah. So, there's a lot of ways to communicate. So body language, sharing, sexual intimacy is a form of communication, priorities, written notes, written text, written emails. Actions speak louder than words, as they say. If your teenager comes, if your teenager's curfew is 10 o'clock and they come walking through the door at 12 a.m., they may not say a word, but they have communicated to you, haven't they? And so communication is more than verbal words. In your handout, in your booklet, it says there that, and I want you to write in the blank there, and we've got it on the screen. It says that communication involves our entire behavior. And then it gives an example. You can talk back and forth with words all day long with people at work, right? But you don't experience oneness with them. I know I pastored for 30 years, and I had a large staff, and I could talk to my staff all day long about work issues, but there wasn't that close oneness, that sharing of life together. And it can be the same way in marriage, and that's my point. It can be almost like that in marriage, to where, you can talk, but you don't really communicate. You don't really experience that oneness. I think that happens in marriages a lot. Denise, I know you wanted to speak into that.
As married couples, we talk all the time. Okay, this child's got to be at soccer practice. This child has gym. This child has to go to the dentist.
Right.
We have to be at such and such house tonight. Church is at this time. We talk all the time. But are we communicating? Is it that superficial, busy schedule talk? And I think here in your notes it says, are we having true, heartfelt sharing of life together? Communion, communication. Are you getting to know each other better? And Dan and I, married 36 years. Do we have it all together? No, We have to daily work at having the right body language, having communication. You think after 36 years you ought to have it together. You don't, You constantly have to work at making marriage better, not taking that spouse for granted, communicating to your spouse those inner desires and inner needs that you have.
And we're not up here saying that every day you're going to enter that deep level of communication with your spouse. I get it. Life is busy. That's not going to happen every day, but it needs to be happening. And that's the point, is that you've got to go beyond the superficial of, hey, who's going to be there when the repairman comes to the house? You got to get past that to a deeper level of communication. And that's hopefully this weekend we're going to kind of lead you into that, and hopefully that's going to happen by the end of this weekend. So what are the results of a lack of communication? That's the next section there, and I think this is so super important. What does communication mean from a husband and wife's perspective? Denise?
Okay, ladies, all at once. What was your desire when you were looking for a spouse? Just one. I'll say it at one time, whatever it is. Sugar daddy. Okay, Cheryl.
That's the pastor's wife.
Anything else?
You married the wrong guy, because I know Mike. He had no money at all. He was poor as Job's turkey.
I think most of us want someone that really cares about us. Not just the outside, the physical. You want someone that truly cares, Yes. Because of my home life being so bad, and because of numerous infidelity and immorality, I did not trust men. I did not. I wanted to be married. I wanted to have a family, but really didn't know if that was going to work for me. I'd just as soon be a missionary on a foreign field and be single and happy, So when Dan and I started talking, I really wanted to know, can I trust him? Does he really, really care about me, or is he just trying to kiss me and use me and mark it on his list, So I think for women, that's a very, very important thing. Do they really care about me? Do they really care about my personal heart.
And communication, I think, for guys, that Forbes article shocked me when it said this, but, I mean, not really. It said half of all men said that companionship was the number one motivating factor in them wanting to marry. They wanted a companion. They wanted somebody that they could do things with and hang out together, and that would be a friend and a companion for them. And so I think that's what it means for a lot of guys. Communication is that companionship aspect. And here's what I really want you to get. It's in your booklet, and I really want you to get this statement. When communication is not taking place, okay? And here's the blank. You ready? You got to get this. You have a drifting apart that naturally takes place. So, when communication begins to break down at any level, there is a natural drifting apart that takes place. Now, you think about that idea of drifting. I think of the ocean on a day when the currents are really strong. And if you've ever been in the ocean on a day when the currents are strong, if you're out there with your wife or your kids, you can end up a half a mile down from your chairs and your towels, and you don't even realize it. And you're like, oh, whoa, wow, we have drifted way down here. And our chairs are way up there. Man, we better get back. And you just drifted with the current kind of away from your chairs. It's just a natural thing. And that's exactly what happens in marriage, is that there is a drifting apart that takes place. And, you're still talking about things, and you're sharing the same address, and you're living under the same roof, but there's really no meaningful sharing of life together. And look, I get it. Life is busy. I know that. In fact, there's a picture here that I wanted to bring up. We were walking. That was just yesterday, right, honey? Or no, that was Wednesday, your birthday. And we were on a walk, and this isn't in Daytona. This is somewhere else where we were. And the path that we were on all of a sudden split like that. And we were kind of walking in the middle. And so we're walking, and it was almost kind of awkward, like, which way are we going to go here? But it was like, okay, we know we're going to go together whichever way we go. So we ended up going this way and going around, and then it came back. And I thought that, and I told her, I said, I got to get a picture of that because I want to use that in the conference. Because what happens is you get two people who are in love, they're dating, they're getting to know each other, showing each other they care, just want to be together, making sure they carve out time to be together, share meaningful moments together, share life together. Then they get married, and then the busyness of life comes, and before you know it, that happens right there. And one of you stays to the right, one of you goes to the left, and there's this drifting apart that happens very naturally. And we have to be so careful about that, because that's when fighting, bickering, picking at each other, depression, frustration, burnout, lack of sexual intimacy, that's when all those issues come, is when the drifting apart starts to happen.
And then in your notes it says that this leads to a more serious issue of a wandering mind and heart. So what is that? Well, ladies, for us, I think it can lead to your husband and you are drifting apart, and your coworker at work compliments you. Your coworker thinks your outfit looks great. Your hair color looks good. Your husband doesn't even notice your hair color change. Your gym, the trainer says, what a great body you have, It might be someone at your church, very kind to you, very attentive to you. And then you start to think this: what would it be like if I was with this person? If I was married to this person? And you become very vulnerable. Why? Because you have a wandering mind and heart. Those go together.
And for guys, when you date, it's like, you think, when we dated, we had fun together. We did things together. Man, when we dated, she said she liked football. And so she always wanted to go to the football game with me. And when we dated, she said she liked going and playing tennis with me. And, and she liked to go and ride in the cart while I golfed. And she liked, she liked to go fishing, And And then all of a sudden now you're thinking, man, she doesn't ever want to do anything with me anymore. We don't ever hang together, and we don't ever do these things anymore. And so then the guy says, but man, this gal at work, she's real interested in football. And this lady at work, she loves to hear me go on and on about my football team. She just hangs on every word. And he begins to think, my wife doesn't want me. She doesn't like me anymore. She can't stand me. And then he begins to look at other women and imagine being with them. A wandering heart and mind. And many times, I think, guys, we think that our marriage is bad. Guys typically, and I pastored for 30 years, talked to a lot of people, typically guys think their marriage is bad because they're not having sex enough. And certainly that is an important issue, and we're going to talk about that very straightforwardly tomorrow in one of the sessions. Tomorrow we got three sessions tomorrow that are all going to really drill down on different areas of communication. And one of them is that sexual part, and that's important. But usually the reason why sex isn't more frequent is because communication broke down somewhere along the way. In your handout, it talks about emotional affairs. Have you ever heard of an emotional affair? How many of you ever heard of an emotional affair? Raise your hand. Okay, an emotional affair is when two people are having this emotional, heartfelt oneness, right? This communication, yet they're married to somebody else. Now, maybe they're not having sex, but we're all adults in here. We're not stupid. We know where this is heading. We know when you start having that emotional bonding, that emotional relationship with someone, when you're having that heartfelt oneness with someone, we know that that's where a physical affair is good. We know that's where it's going to end up. But in your handout, it says, what is an emotional affair? And I want you to write this in. It says it's a bonding. It's a bonding that is happening through ongoing communication. Denise, I know we got to be conscious of the time here, but go ahead and I don't want you to speak into that for a minute, just about that.
I think in today's society, the social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, texting, emails, people are communicating with people they knew 25, 35 years ago, and that emotional affair can happen quickly. If your husband and you are in a spat, maybe a long spat, you start communicating with someone else, and it's all nice, and you start sharing these intimate things with them about your life, and what happens? You have that bonding, that emotional bonding. It's dangerous. Don't do it. Protect yourself.
And I know Satan makes those options look inviting and makes them look great, but listen to me. Whatever difficulties you're having in your marriage, because some of you may have come to this, and maybe your marriage is on life support, maybe you're struggling right now with some things. Hey, look, everybody does. But when that emotional triangle begins to happen with another person, that's when things really get bad. Guilt, depression, causing hurt to loved ones, and you end up dealing with the same problems you're probably dealing with now with somebody different, or maybe a new set of problems. So the best option is just to fix your marriage, and it can be fixed if you're both willing. Now, let me go to the last section, because I want to leave time at the end for one other thing. It says, why do married couples quit having meaningful communication? And I just jotted down a few things here, all right? The most common ones, all right? Number one, I'm going to go through these quickly. You get too busy with work, right? Most people nowadays, you got to have two incomes to survive. So both people have their work, their careers, and you get busy with work. Number two, you both develop different interests. So even when you're not working, you're not together much because you both have developed different interests. Instead of interests that you both like, you both have kind of developed your own. So now not only does work separate you for hours every day, now your interests take you apart in addition to that. Number three, conversations turn to fights, right? Most of us lack conflict resolution skills. And so a lot of times conflict is just left unresolved. There's fighting, there's screaming, and there's huffing and puffing and slamming doors, but nothing's ever fixed. It's never resolved. So conversations turn to fights. And then number four, your lives are consumed with the children. When kids come along, that's easy to have that happen where your lives just become so consumed with the kids that you do not carve out time for each other. I call it the black hole marriage cycle begins. You know what the black hole marriage cycle is? Is that the companionship, right? Most guys, it said marry for companionship, right? Because the wife, she just likes to hang with you and do things with you. And that, when the companionship and the sex isn't what it once was, he pulls back and he quits communicating. He doesn't want to communicate at a deep level with words. He pulls back. And then the more he withdraws, the less his wife feels like being his companion and having sex with him. And so this downward cycle of behavior begins. And so let's give them that last thought, Denise. The last thing.
The last thing says, a very simple yet profound thought. If a couple continues to engage in the activities that brought them together in the first place, their marriage will tend to be a good one. And you know, that Forbes article said that drifting usually happens in that first 3 to 7 years. But it says 4% of divorces happen after that time. And Dan and I thought, well, why is that? You know, why does that percentage go so far down? And we thought it's because those that made it established good habits of communication. You know, they established it and they kept it going.
So Revelation 2 talks about, he says to the church at Ephesus, he said, you know what I have against you, Jesus said? He said, you left your first love. He said, that's your problem, church at Ephesus. And he's talking about their love for Jesus. That first love, when you first got saved, he said, you left your first love. And he said, the remedy for that is, he said, I want you to repent. I want you to change the way you're behaving. And I want you to go back and do the first works. I want you to go back and do the things you did at the beginning when you really loved Jesus. That's not written about marriage, but it's very applicable to marriage. And the application is pretty obvious, right? Remember when you first fell in love with your spouse? Go back and do the things that you did that caused you to fall in love with them in the first place. Go back and do the first works. And like she just said, couples that do the same things that they did when they dated, and they do those same things, they're going to tend to have a very good marriage, because they're, again, going back and doing the first love. So tomorrow, we're going to look at some really practical principles on how we can enjoy true communication throughout our married life. But tonight, I want to end with this. I've got 10 minutes, and so what I want to do is I'm going to have Trevor quickly hand out something for you tonight. And this is called a marriage inventory, and it's just one page. It's not going to take but about 5 minutes to do, but I want to do it together. So if you could hold off looking at it right now until we actually can do it together, that would be awesome. And we're going to hand them out at each table. Everybody gets one, husband and wife, because the whole idea of this is husband and wife have to do it separately. And I don't want you to look at each other. Trevor, I'm going to need one too when you're done. But you're going to have to, can I grab one, Cheryl? Oh, thank you. I want husbands and wives to both do this together tonight. I'm sorry, not together, separately. Do it separately. Do not look at what the other one is writing down. If you got to turn your back to each other, do it. But I don't want you to look at what the other person is writing, please. Do not look at what your spouse is writing. It'll defeat the whole purpose of this. All right? Now, here's how the inventory works. Follow closely. Look at the top. There's going to be about 8 statements. You're either going to put a 1, 2, 3, or 4 beside each one. The 1 means I agree very strongly with that statement. 2 means I agree moderately. Yes, I agree, but, moderately. 3 means I disagree moderately with that statement. 4 means, no, that's not true at all of us. I disagree very strongly. Now, before you just go put 1s all the way down, some of these are asked in opposite ways, so that ain't going to work, okay? So you're actually going to have to think on every single statement. So let's look at it real quickly. Don't look at what the other one's writing. Please cover your answers. When you're done, I'm going to have you fold this up, put it in your booklet, and then your homework is I want you guys to try and look at each other's answers and discuss them with each other before tomorrow morning. All right, number 1. It says we regularly make time to have deep, meaningful conversations. Don't think about it too hard. Kind of put what your gut reaction is. Yes, I agree very strongly. I agree moderately would be a 2. 3 means I disagree moderately. In other words, sometimes it happens, but not regularly. And 4 would mean, no, we're just really not doing that hardly ever, right? All right, number 2, my spouse and I regularly discuss our feelings and emotions. Please put down now that there's no right or wrong answers here. The only right answer is an honest answer. The only wrong answer is a dishonest answer. So please do not put what you think your spouse wants to see. Put down how you really feel. Number 3 there, the third one, our conversations rarely go beneath the surface of the superficial. So you see how that's now asked a little bit differently. So you can't just assume everything, is going to be the same here. So our conversations rarely go beneath the surface of the superficial. The next one there, our busy schedules keep us from having heartfelt communication. So do you agree with that? Put a 1. You say, well, I do agree moderately. Yeah, that is somewhat true. Then put a 2. You say, no, that's not true. 3, all right? Not true at all. 4. All right, next one. I have a difficult time sharing my true feelings and emotions. You know what? I would have to put probably a 1 or 2 on that one for me. Denise can tell you I do have problems with that, and I have to work on it all the time because I do have difficult time sharing my true feelings and emotions. All right? The next one, our conversations often turn to fights. Ladies, do not let him peek at your answers. Cover it up. All right, next one, just 2 more. We allow our children to keep us from having good communication. Now, again, that's not saying every day of your life. It's just saying as a rule. As a rule, kind of, that's kind of like norm, situation normal, right? We allow our children. Or you say, no, that's not true at all. Okay, then put a 4. All right? And then the last one is this one. Think about this. I feel that we could benefit from marriage counseling in helping us to communicate better. All right? So again, no right or wrong answers. We're just trying to get communication going. So the whole goal of this is for you guys now, just fold it up. Don't even worry about it right now. Fold it up. Put it in your booklet. Take your booklet home with you, and then sometime tonight or tomorrow, y'all get up and discuss this. And I want y'all to look at what the other one put. You may see some surprises, and that's good, because what I want you to do is talk about it. I want you to say, look, for example, look at the second one. My spouse and I regularly discuss our feelings and emotions. You may put, guys, a 1. I agree strongly. She may put a 4. And so you may put a 1, she puts a 4. Would y'all agree that's something to talk about? Right? So that's the idea of this, is just to get communication going. And just to say, okay, if, say, Leah puts a 4 there, right? My spouse and I regularly discuss our feelings and emotions, and she puts, no, I disagree with that. So then the idea is, Jesse says, Leah, why did you put a 4? And then Leah gets a chance to explain and say, well, the reason why I put a 4 is, and then he actually listens to what she's saying, right? And they didn't really do that. I'm making all that up, but I'm picking on them. They're from my church in Daytona, so I can pick on them. But anyway, the idea of this is just to get communication going. And so these are really helpful. Tomorrow, we're going to look at three different areas of communication that are vital for you to have a satisfying marriage. 3 different areas of communication. We said communication is more than words. So we're going to look at 3 different areas of communication and hopefully get some really good ideas on how you can improve those areas. And again, not legalistic laws or trying to give you a bunch of rules to follow. Hopefully just get that communication going between each of you. Can I say a prayer for all of you right now, okay? Let me do that. Lord, I love you, God, and I thank you for each and every couple that is here. And Lord, I pray, Father, that you will help us to take kind of just an overview here we did tonight on communication, and help us, Lord, to hopefully take this with us tonight in our hearts and discuss it. Talk about it. Maybe things are great. Maybe things are not so great. Maybe things are great, but they can be improved. Maybe there's some marriages in here tonight that desperately need improvement. But Lord, whatever the situation is, help us to go right where we're at and know that you will meet us where we're at, and you want our marriage to succeed. You said we're one flesh. And I know the world isn't going to teach us that, but your word does. We are one flesh. And when we become one flesh, like Denise brought out so well, you're not going to separate something that's become one with something else without hurt, without a lot of hurt, without hurting others. So, Lord, I want each marriage in here to make it. I want it to not only make it, I want it to thrive. And God, I pray, Father, and thank you so much for my wife. And thank you, Lord, that she is my best friend after all these years. And that, Lord, I want every couple in here to be able to say that. And Lord, I just pray that your grace will help us. We have no hope apart from you, Jesus. So we cry out to you, and we want so much, Lord, to be the spouse that our spouse needs us to be. So God, help us. We love you so much, and thank you for such a great night of food and fellowship, and it's just been awesome, the music. So thank you, God. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.